Before there was a United States, there were colonies. 13 small settlements stretched along the eastern shore of North America, fragile, isolated, and unknown. Each began as an experiment, in faith, in fortune, and in survival. The first settlers didn't come to build a nation. They came searching for a chance to start over, to worship freely, to escape the old world's limits. They did not yet know they were planting the seeds of a revolution. In 1607, English ships anchored beside a swampy river in Virginia. They called it Jamestown, the first permanent English settlement. Hunger and disease killed many, but determination kept the survivors alive. Tobacco would become their lifeline, the colony's first major export, and its first moral dilemma, as enslaved Africans were brought to work the fields. The pattern was set: prosperity for some, pain for others. Far to the north, another colony took root for a different reason: faith. In 1620, the Mayflower carried pilgrims to Plymouth, fleeing religious persecution. They signed the Mayflower Compact, a promise of self-government under God. Within a decade, thousands more Puritans arrived, building towns like Boston and Salem. Their faith gave them strength, and sometimes intolerance. But their idea that people could govern themselves would shape America's future. Between New England's rocky shores and the South's plantations lay the middle colonies: New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. Founded on trade, tolerance, and opportunity, they became the cultural crossroads of colonial America. Quakers in Pennsylvania, led by William Penn, preached peace and equality. Dutch merchants filled New York's harbors with goods from around the world. Here, different languages, religions, and ideas blended into something new, the first hints of an American identity. To the south, colonies like Maryland, the Carolinas, and Georgia prospered through the labor of enslaved Africans. Plantations grew vast and rich, but their wealth was built on suffering. The southern colonies became the agricultural heart of British America: tobacco, rice, and indigo, feeding the empire's hunger for profit. Yet even in these fields of oppression, whispers of freedom began to rise. The contradiction of liberty and slavery would one day tear the nation apart. By the mid-18th century, over 2 million people lived in the 13 colonies. Life was hard, but it was free compared to Europe. Roads linked distant settlements. Newspapers carried new ideas. Colonists debated philosophy, science, and faith. They were still loyal to Britain, but they were learning to think for themselves. A sense of independence was quietly taking root. In 1754, Britain and France fought for control of North America. Colonists joined British troops against French forces and their native allies. It was a brutal war, one that ended with Britain's victory, but at a heavy cost. The empire was deep in debt, and Parliament looked to the colonies for payment. The war had protected them. Now Britain expected them to pay the price. The colonies would soon refuse. New laws and taxes came swiftly: the Sugar Act, the Stamp Act, the Tea Act. Each one was a reminder that the colonists had no voice in Parliament. No taxation without representation, they cried. Petitions turned to protests. Protests turned to defiance. In 1773, patriots disguised as Mohawks dumped tea into Boston Harbor. The British called it treason. The colonists called it justice. Britain answered rebellion with punishment, closing ports, sending troops, seizing weapons. The colonies answered with unity. In 1774, representatives met in Philadelphia, the First Continental Congress. They called themselves not subjects, but Americans. The next spring, shots rang out at Lexington and Concord. The revolution had begun, and the 13 colonies would never be the same. The 13 colonies were born from struggle, faith, and contradiction. They built farms and cities, but also chains. They preached liberty, but lived with inequality. Yet from these imperfections came an idea that all people have the right to govern themselves. In 1776, that idea became a declaration, and soon a nation. From 13 small colonies rose the United States of America. Their journey began as an accident of empire, but ended as the birth of freedom itself. Subscribe for more stories that shaped our world, past to present, where history meets the future.